Metal Jesus here, and I'm back again with another recent pickups video. These are games I've added to my collection over the last couple months, and much of it is thanks to viewers and subscribers like you sending me awesome stuff, so I'm going to do some shout outs when I can. But I can't really show everything. I've kind of picked about 30 plus games, just kind of a big variety of stuff here, and it covers a lot of different things. Old PC games, Xbox, newer stuff, even some handhelds, even some TV plug-and plays, some really cool stuff. And if I can, I'm going to show you the gameplay footage. At the end of this video, I've also picked up a bunch of really cool music vinyl, so I want to show you some of that as well. Let's take a look. So where do I start? Well, I'm just gonna lean forward and start picking stuff out of this pile here because I've got a lot to cover. And right off the bat, I'm gonna highlight something that a cool guy, his name's Chase, and he runs a YouTube channel called Machine Games Texas. He sent me some really cool stuff. I'm gonna only highlight a little bit of it, but here is Battletech: The Crescent Hawk's Revenge. This is an old DOS game, 256 color, CGA graphics, heavy box. He found a copy of this and sent it to me, and I love these old mech games, so it's really cool to have that. But a serious highlight is, oh dude, I can't believe he found a copy of this. Wolfenstein 3D. This is the original Wolfenstein. He sent me a copy of this in this beautiful, huge, big PC box here. So excited to get this, and it comes with the official hint guide in here as well. And oh man, I remember back in the day playing this game a ton. I mean, a buddy of mine had an old, I think it was a 386 25 megahertz, and he and I would play this game to death. Love this game. Such a, when people talk about some classic first-person shooters, it doesn't get much more classic than this. And so this is a milestone, PC game to have in my collection, and I'm so glad to have it. Thank you very much. You guys know that I'm a big fan of the PSP, and recently I added some PSP games in my collection. Typically, if I go into a store and they have them for cheap, I try to buy as many as I can. Now, not all these are great, but some of them are supposedly pretty good, including Fat Princess Fistful of Cake. A lot of people say this is one of the better games on the PSP. I have not played it. I know you can get this also on the PlayStation 3, I believe, through their PlayStation Network. So it's cool to have this. Also, a lot of people say this game's good. I haven't played it yet. It's the WALL-E game. This is the Pixar movie. I love this movie to death, and I don't know if the game's any good or not, but I figured I'd pick it up on the PSP for cheap. Speaking of cheap, and another movie I also like, happens to be a Disney movie, that is Tron Evolution. And Tron Legacy actually was a pretty good movie. I liked it more than I expected to. And now the Tron games also came out on the consoles, and surprisingly, it's the PSP version that is the better reviewed game, the one that got the highest review scores. And so I think it's because it really just focused on mini games. And I played a little bit of it to capture footage, and yeah, it's not bad. I mean, again, I don't know if I would pay full price for this, but for a couple bucks, it seemed like a cool addition to my collection. And then finally, Need for Speed Pro Street. I love racing games, and I wasn't really impressed with this on the consoles, to be honest with you, but again, sometimes the PSP version sort of stripped down to the core, to the good stuff, and so I figured I'd take a chance and add Need for Speed Pro Street to my collection. I went to some garage sales in my neighborhood, and I came up with some really awesome gems. And I went to this house, and this guy was selling his entire PlayStation 1 collection, and some games you just typically do not see very often, including Medieval 1 and 2. These are games that are pretty well sought after on the PlayStation 1. Maybe I played the PSP version of this, but I've never played them on the PlayStation 1. So that was cool to get these. They're in great condition. But that's not all. He also had Warcraft 2 on the PlayStation 1. And I believe this supports the PlayStation Mouse. I certainly would hope so. Again, a game I typically do not see when I'm out and about. But then he also had a bunch of the Resident Evil games. So he had the Resident Evil 1, the Director's Cut, In addition to that, I guess I should say that I also bought his PlayStation 1 DualShock. So he sold me the console in the box in great condition, and so that makes sense that this version of it would come with that. And I guess this version is fairly collectible because it updates the controls to support the DualShock. So that's cool. And then Resident Evil 2 I finally got, as well as Resident Evil 3. So I'm doing really well on Resident Evil games in my collection. Also, I got a copy of the RPG Wild Arms 2. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Wild Arms RPG series. I like them quite a bit. I think the only one I'm missing now is probably the first one. I have the first one I downloaded off the PlayStation Network, but I don't have a physical copy of it, so I'm getting very close. Some of you may remember that about a year ago I did a popular video on TV plug-and-plays. I didn't think that it would be that popular, but it turns out a lot of people emailed me saying that they really remembered those fondly. And so I've been getting some donations from fans. Either they don't want them anymore or they want them to be in my collection. And a subscriber, a viewer to my channel, sent a bunch of them to me. I'm going to show you just a couple of them. His name is Daichi Kono, and he sent me one here that I thought was pretty awesome. It's actually one of my favorites. It is Classic Arcade Pinball. It's a TV plug and play. Plug this end into your TV here, put some batteries in the back here. But this is awesome because essentially it feels like a pinball machine. So it's got the two flipper buttons here as well as the tilt buttons. But check this out, it has a little plunger for the ball. And this is surprisingly awesome. Actually, this is, again, one of my favorite TV plug and plays now. Has 3 different tables, and you know, it's an arcade, so it doesn't exactly have like a realistic feel to it. It kind of feels more like a, you know, maybe like a Genesis or a Super Nintendo, maybe like a PlayStation 1 kind of era, but I don't care as long as it's fun. So thank you very much for sending me this. Also, while I was out and about, I found the Tetris TV plug and plays. Now, a lot of people are looking for these. They're kind of collectible. They're not really valuable or anything, but they're definitely really neat if you are into Tetris. Unfortunately, they are not some of the best plug and plays because it has this knob here, so you turn it left or right to rotate your blocks, and then you push down to place them, and it just doesn't work very well. So unfortunately, I had high hopes for this, and I was hoping it would be a little bit better, but really it's just kind of for show. And again, it's just kind of a neat sort of Tetris variant, you know, if you're into that sort of thing. Recently, I did a PlayStation 2 Hidden Gems video, and I made that video, which was a lot of fun, and afterwards I added 2 more games in my collection that, you know, probably should have been in that video, so maybe they'll be in part 3, but I want to mention them here, including a game I used to have, and I got it again. It's called RAD. It's Robotic Alchemic Drive. Did I say that correctly? It's kind of a weird name. This is a really interesting mech game. You play this from the perspective of a person who's controlling a mech from the ground. So you have like a little remote control like device, I guess. And so the entire game basically is not from the mech's point of view. It's actually from street level, playing as a boy or a little girl. And it's a really interesting dynamic. It's almost like a rock'em sock'em kind of, you know, beat 'em up sort of thing. But it's almost like a simulation too, because if you put it in the normal mode, you control with your controller your legs, you control your swing of your arms, everything is controlled. It's just such an interesting game. I've never played anything quite like it, so I was really happy to add that to my collection. Also, I got an RPG from Atlas called Metal Saga. Again, I didn't know very much about this when I bought it. I actually thought it was going to be like a Metal Slug kind of compilation. I don't know why I thought that, but anyway, so I was pretty happy when I was like, oh, cool. It's like a kind of an obscure sort of RPG that I'd never heard of. So can't wait to, you know, dive into this and check it out. You guys know my buddy Drunken Master Paul. Well, on his channel, probably sometime last year, he did a video where he built a huge Steel Battalion enclosure for that game. And it turns out that he did all that work and he doesn't like the game. And it's kind of a surprise because he really likes mech games, but it turns out he actually likes arcade mech games. And Steel Battalion is the exact opposite of that. So he donated to me Steel Battalion, and not just the game. the entire controller. And for those of you that don't know, Steel Battalion is a bit notorious with its controller. And basically what this thing is massive. I mean, in a nutshell, it is one of the most out of control, complicated controllers ever made. And for that reason, I actually think it's freaking awesome. So I'm excited that he actually gave this to me. You know, his loss, right? I can't wait to set this up and play it. I mean, to give you an idea, oh my God, there's buttons for everything. There's buttons for everything that you would possibly want to do in a mech. It's so cool. It's a total hardcore simulator. And one of my favorite things about it is that if you take enough damage and your mech is going to explode and you don't eject, the game basically nukes your save game. It doesn't mess around. This game will nuke your save game and you have to start completely over. So I don't know, there's something about that just sounds awesome. So I can't wait to set this game up and give it a try. For a while now, I've been wanting to get a complete Wing Commander collection. And it's a very doable sort of collecting goal. And I'm actually really close. And I want to show you some of the things I've added to my collection to kind of get me a bit closer there, including Wing Commander Prophecy on the Game Boy Advance. Now this is one of the very few times I've jumped on eBay to get a game, but I really wanted to get this in the box. It just so happens it's sealed. I don't really necessarily care about sealed games. It just came that way, and it's kind of neat. And it's not really expensive, but it was one of the versions of Wing Commander I was missing from my collection. And of course, I don't know if I've showed this before, but I do have a box copy of Wing Commander for the Super Nintendo. So this is awesome. And you know, when I was out there looking for Wing Commander stuff, I was like, okay, I need to get the movie. And the movie kind of killed the franchise in some ways, I think. It's unfortunate because it's not very good. I mean, I think that they tried. The reason why I kind of want to get this is because it is actually made by Chris Roberts, who created the original series. So I consider it to be canon and definitely a part of my collection. But one of the best things I've gotten for that in a while is Wing Commander, the original. So this is the original version that came out for DOS way back in the day. But if you look closely, it's actually signed by Chris Roberts. So kind of a highlight for my Wing Commander collection. I was actually really happy to get this. It's so awesome. I've also recently, through donations, got a copy of Wing Commander Prophecy, the big box version, and some other stuff too. So I'm very close. I think I'm only missing, I think there's a 3DO version and a Sega CD version. And I think once I get those, I'll be completely done. Speaking of PC games, I got some more that are really awesome, including a big box copy of Outlaws. One of the coolest first-person shooters ever released, because I think it was one of the first that was actually a Western. And so this is pretty cool. I don't think it sold very well, but I don't care. Now the box is kind of pushed in and it's not very, I don't know, it's not in great shape. But sometimes with these PC games, you just need to get them while you can, because there's just not a lot of copies out there floating around, at least that I've ran into. So it's cool to have this in my collection. Also, I found a copy of a game that I used to absolutely love. I still love this game. It's a futuristic racing game called Slipstream 5000. Big box version of this. Man, this game was so awesome back in the day. This is a flying game that's very similar also to maybe Wipeout. Yeah, it's kind of like that, where you get weapons and things like that. Just a really neat game. Again, it wasn't super popular, but it's cool to own. I love Star Wars, and here is one of the greatest Star Wars games ever made, Dark Forces. Very cool. Used to love this game back in the day. Actually, Dark Forces 1 and 2 are really awesome shooters. Happy to have this. And then recently I got a kind of a late release Sierra game. This came out technically after I left, but I loved it so much, and I don't think I ever owned the big box version of it, and that is Homeworld. This is one of those games where Sierra published it. It was actually created by Relic, and just a beautiful box here. Great graphics. I remember at the time when this game came out, I thought the graphics were some of the best I'd ever seen. And so anyways, it's very cool to own this. For those of you that follow me on Facebook and Twitter know that I recently got a Nintendo 3DS, finally. And I got the Yoshi one here, and I'm absolutely loving this handheld. It's so awesome. I've been going a little nuts buying 3DS games and also going back and buying some DS games for it because the screen's so awesome on it, so big. I'm just going to show you a couple of them here. This one, though, I think is a total hidden gem. It is Nano Assault on the 3DS. It's a shooter, and I gotta tell you, it has some of the best 3D effects of any game on the system. And I know that that's a huge claim, but I just think this game's amazing in its technology. And it's not a very expensive game. It's actually, relatively inexpensive. You can download it through the eStore, but of course I love having the physical copy here. And so anyways, if you have a 3DS, definitely check this out. And then I went back and also got some just regular DS games, including another shooter called Bangai-O, I believe it's called Bangai-O Spirits. This is a really interesting and weird game. It's by Treasure, so they make kind of weird and interesting games, but I love them. They always have a little bit of a twist on it. So I've only played a little bit of this, and at first, I'll be honest, I was a little bit lost. I didn't know exactly what was going on. But a lot of people say this is a total hidden gem, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then I went to an expo, and my buddy Reggie was there, and he highly recommended I check out this game called Sprung. This is a game where everyone scores. And I guess this is like a dating sim sort of thing. I don't know. I thought that was just kind of funny. So actually, not only Reggie said that, but a bunch of people were like, oh yeah, Sprung is really fun. So very cool to own this. And then speaking of Reggie, actually, we recently played a live show. And Reggie's so funny. I've mentioned this before, but typically whenever he comes over and we hang out, he always palms me, like we'll shake hands. But in his palm, he'll have a game. and I love the fact that he does this. It's so funny. He palmed me another game. It's for the Game Boy Advance, and that is Counterpunch. And this is I guess this is kind of like a spiritual sequel, or maybe it's a direct sequel to Punch-Out. And I played a bunch of this. This is actually really awesome, so thank you, Reggie. So let's talk about some newer games, well, at least new to me. I've been buying some games on my PlayStation 3 because they're so cheap. And one of the more interesting facets of the PlayStation 3 are all the HD re-releases that have come out on it. So I've been buying some of those, including the God of War series that have been remastered in HD, like the Origins collection here. These are the PSP games like Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta that have been remastered up to HD and re-released on the PlayStation 3. That's a pretty cool collection. Here's another one, the original God of War and God of War 2. And then some other ones that came out on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. I just happened to get the PS3 versions. The Zone of Enders HD collection. I've never played these games, and I'm really looking forward to it. Also, Ico, and then the Shadow of the Colossus. And then, of course, the Tomb Raider trilogy, and then also Splinter Cell. So I just kind of want to show all these because I'm kind of going a little crazy buying all these HD remixes. There's a bunch of them out there, like the Jak and Daxter series, the Sly Cooper series. There's a bunch of them out there, so I'm gonna probably end up buying a lot of those and maybe doing a dedicated video on it. It should be pretty cool. All right, let's swing back to the PC for a bit here. A fan of my channel, his name's Jason, sent me a box of games, and I'm gonna highlight a couple of these here. And there's a couple that I didn't know anything about, and it turns out that they're really highly rated and people love them. And I was really surprised because Elvira, the role-playing game, people love this, and I didn't know anything about it. It's actually by Accolade, and this is for DOS. People love these games, and I think it's kind of funny because Elvira was kind of a B-movie horror actress, and I don't know, who knew that she would have like a great game? It seems like something that would just kind of, that they decide, sort of poop out and be, and then kind of fade off into the history or whatever. But no, actually people love this game, so I can't wait to give it a try. I love cheesy games, so that could be kind of cool. And then he also sent me the sequel, Elvira 2, which actually has a pretty badass cover here, The Jaws of Sybaris. So both of these actually got role-playing game of the year, it looks like. So who knew that they would be so awesome? So thank you very much. Next up on the PC, oh man, I remember when this game first came out. This was a computer killer. Falcon 3.0. This is a hardcore flight simulator that when this thing came out, like in 1992, I guess, this would kill computers. It was so hardcore. Like you would go out and you'd have to buy a new computer just to run this thing. And it's laughable now. Like when you look at the graphics, you're like, how could, my phone could run this. I mean, flip phones could probably run this game now. But back in the day, man, this was really, really an amazing game. And what was really cool about this one, it had a couple things. One, you could link up, I think for the first time in a flight simulator, via modem, you could actually play each other, which was very awesome. The other thing was that this game comes with an absolutely massive manual. And what's amazing about this manual is that it is a complete guide to learning how to fly a jet fighter. It's pretty in-depth. It also includes history. So just an amazing kind of game. I remember back in the day trying to get it to run on my computer, and it just wouldn't run to save its life. So, it's a really interesting part of history, especially if you're into flight simulators. I got another game donation by a guy named Nuno. He actually sent me a bunch of stuff, but I'm just going to highlight probably one of the most amazing things in that box. That is Wizardry, Bane of the Cosmic Forge. This is a awesome role-playing game. I believe this is the 6th in the series, and this is a really sought-after game, and I was really excited that he decided to send me this because the Wizardry series is amazing, and I love RPGs, and this is a game I've been looking for quite a while, so thank you very much. And then finally, I also got a donation from a good friend of mine. He's sent me stuff before. His name's Dr. Retro. I've highlighted him before, and he just has some of the most amazing pickups videos. He sent me a game that is one of the jewels in my collection now. I love first-person shooters, especially those old first-person shooters. He sent me the shareware version, Shadow Warrior Lo Wang. And this is the shareware version sealed. So this is completely unopened. I was just like, wow, dude, thank you very much. This game is awesome. I've played it a lot, and it's funny that it's sealed because I really want to open it up, but there's no real good reason to. I don't know, I'm always torn, it's like this. I'm like, I don't know. It's so unusual that you get a sealed game, but thank you, dude. Thank you very much. Like I mentioned previously, I want to show you some of the music vinyl that I've added to my collection over the last couple months here. And I'm going to start off with the Scorpions. Now, these are two best of albums that I think a lot of people in North America would be like, oh, who cares? I mean, everyone knows the Scorpions. But the thing about the Scorpions is that we in North America kind of discovered them around the time of maybe 1981 or 82 with the Blackout album, which was a fantastic album. I love that. But the Scorpions actually had tons of albums before that. And so a lot of people like me, I'm not familiar with that stuff. And so these two best of albums have the best of that early stuff on them. And what's really interesting is that the Scorpions are really two different bands. They're the heavy metal side, which we kind of know. And then in the 70s, they had a much more kind of psychedelic vibe to them. And as a matter of fact, the guitarist at the time was really influenced, and he sounded quite a bit like Jimi Hendrix. So it was very bluesy, again, very psychedelic. So having these two best of albums really complements my collection very well. It's cool to have those in there. In addition to that, I also picked up something completely different from that. That is the Dandy Warhols Live. This is 13 Tales from Urban Bohemia Live at the Wonder. Now, the reason why this is such a cool album for me to own is because, one, I'm a huge fan of the Dandy Warhols. They are a Portland, Oregon band, and they mix kind of alternative with it's kind of droney, almost like the Velvet Underground. Really excellent stuff, and this is a tour that they did, the entire album. So it was an anniversary, they did that for that. So that's really cool. It's a fold-out album. Awesome to own that. In addition to that, I also picked up Tool's very first album. This is their EP. It's called Opiate, and this is a awesome Tool album. If you are a fan of Tool and you've never heard this album, you should check it out. It's cool. Half of it is live, I believe. Here's something completely different. This is Bon Jovi. This is a promotional copy for their song, You Give Love a Bad Name. Now, you're going to notice that right off the bat that the cover is somewhat striking. And what's really interesting about this is that this is the original cover for their album, Slippery When Wet, but it was rejected by the record label for kind of obvious reasons. So anyways, it's a little bit collectible. It's a little bit interesting if you are a Bon Jovi or a hair metal fan to get a copy of this in my collection. And then finally, I got something completely different from that. And that is, I wonder how many of you are going to remember this. I think you pronounce it Miko. This is a guy who did disco versions of famous music. And he did this in the late 70s and the early 80s. He would do disco versions of, what has he got on here? He's got Flashdance, Superman theme. He's got the War Games theme on here, Twilight Zone, Simon and Simon. He does a disco version of that. But he's most famous for doing Star Wars disco versions. And so here you see The Empire Strikes Back. And I gotta say, I actually think it's pretty cool. It's really cheesy. You can't really take it very seriously, but I don't know. It's something about it is just kind of awesome. And if you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't checked out the disco versions of the theme songs, I highly recommend it. All right, guys. Well, that's just some of the games and music I've added to my collection over the last couple months. With the generous donations from you guys, I actually didn't cover all the donations that I got because I didn't want this video to be, 2 hours long or whatever. But I really, really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I definitely appreciate the support and the love and all that you guys send my way. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you guys find when you guys are out hunting. I'd love to know. Please post a comment below or post on Facebook or Twitter. Thank you very much. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel and thank you for subscribing. Take care. All right, as I mentioned, thanks for watching. And if you like these videos, please subscribe. I release a new one every Friday.